Barry Gordon, Michaelangelo, Townsend Colemen, Raphael and Donatello, Rob Paulsen, and Clarke, Leonardo, and Rocksteady.
Donnie got the shaft chair.
Spoon! Yeah. Oh no, wait, that's his line.
That's it.
Wrong show.
Wrong show. Wow, well, the $5 seats are now going for $2.50, so look at that. I'm sure glad y'all got a chair. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for being here. Guys, and we're going to open it up to your questions. So we have the microphones right over there. So in just a couple of moments, we'll get to your questions. But I get to start.
Sure, man.
When you guys recorded Turtles, since we're going to start with Turtles, but you guys have these resumes that are pages and pages long. Thank goodness for PDFs. You don't have to print them out anymore. There's so much animation that is recorded just you in a booth with a director versus a group setting. And there have been positives and negatives to both. What was the 80s series like? What was the 2012 series like? And how does whatever took place, how did it enhance the show?
The 80s series was all of us in a room, sitting in front of music stands, and we did every show that way. In fact, we had kind of a strange producer in that sense, not director, but Fred Wolf actually, who produced the series, wouldn't really allow us to do individual sessions. Like if we were out of town, and some of you who aren't really, turtle junkies will know that we got replaced. So sometimes I wasn't Donatello, and sometimes Rob wasn't Raphael, which I thought was weird because I think if you had a choice,
Trust me, we knew.
Yeah, it was obvious.
Yeah, and as Barry said, not only did we do it, we always prefer it. Every time you're in a room with world-class talent, that old axiom that a high tide raises all boats is absolutely true. We are all better as the sum of our parts. It's way better to be with these guys. And I would submit Townsend and I also, well, all of us, I don't know if you were, did you ever do The Tick, Barry?
No.
No, but Cammy and Townie and I were also on The Tick. Same thing. When you're in a room with that many
We've got the credentials. I'm telling you. There's 1,000 credits between the four.
It just makes everybody better. I'm way better when I'm with these guys.
it's because you feed off you feed off each other and the energy more than anything. Yeah.
Why do you think, not to get too technical, but is it cost cutting? Is it easier to just have one individual? What's the motivation? I can understand now with ISDN the way it is and all the technology, if a guy's in New York and then somebody else is in Quebec or wherever.
Or Chicago.
Yeah.
Blame it for crowd.
You're welcome.
It's all of what you said, but often, certainly, animation, as you mentioned, has utterly exploded. And in that, often there are people who have very viable on-camera careers who are involved in animated shows. So it does allow them to get the gig and not have to worry about being replaced, as Barry said, because they get a movie. We all want to work, and nobody wants to turn down any gig. So it's great in that regard. But still in all, it is much more preferable to be together. It just doesn't seem, it's not as, unfortunately, not as normal anymore because people are off doing all kinds of stuff. They go, oh, that's great, we'll pick you up later, but it's way better to be together.
Seth, I think what's happened is that with feature animation, and all being celebrities in that sense, they do record separately. Okay, and many of those celebs are sort of trickling down into TV animation now. So it's and technologically, like you said, we've got the ability now to be recording from anywhere. So why not?
No, and a lot of times you see on social media when cast lists are announced, people will say, "I want the voice guys. I want
Yeah.
the voice guys. And you know, you guys
So
are all
much
using
mention that.
Twitter, and I hear it all the time because you know the difference. And from an animation standpoint, you know the difference when the person is a screen actor doing a voice versus a voice guy doing a voice. But when I say guy, it's guys I know.
But it was
Well
interesting,
said.
I read, I was reading about Lion King, the new Lion King, and I was reading the fact that as much as we all do that now, we do our solo thing, when it came to Timon and Pumbaa, Seth Rogen and Billy Eichner insisted on being in the same room together, and that, if you watch it, you hear all of these improv, things going on that did not happen in the original.
Yeah, that can only happen when you're together like that.
Only.
There are certain shows, to be honest, where there are some shows where whether or not I'm with these guys isn't going to change the way I deliver a line. There are some cookie cutter kind of shows where this is how I would say it, whether or not Rob was sitting next to me. But for example, when Rob and I were on Barnyard or the Tick, where there was a lot of improv, a lot of my reads wouldn't be what they were if he didn't set me up the way he did the line before. It's like, I will go into what he just said makes me now think of that line like this.
And that's a big deal. I don't think it's a surprise in retrospect as we get older to look back and go, well, now we understand why those shows are successful. They're like any other acting gig, and you're inspired by the talent around you, and irrespective of whether or not that improv line ends up in the show, the acting phrase, the energy created with all these great talents utterly affects what's on the screen. And I think that's why some of these shows end up being iconic and really fun to watch.
One of the things the job that I enjoyed the most, and I wasn't on the show, was getting to be a reader, which is I worked on Road to El Dorado.
Oh, you did?
Yes, being a reader for, yes I did. Aren't you glad you're sitting next to me?
I knew you.
I sat off mic for Kenneth Branagh.
What?
And, are you just
No,
putting me
I'm
on?
serious. I love that.
Oh, I do too, and it was like, I'm not worthy to be in the same room. And Kevin Kline.
Yes.
And so, my performance was,
Lawrence Kasdan directed that movie, I think.
I don't remember. Stop! And let me finish, darling. And just, and we still have to, they hired actors to read off mic for these huge, wonderful performers. And so I'm not just there giving their line like this, I'm performing with them, but it was such a treat. And they were wonderful, but that's also the thing that voice actors get to do is be off mic with these other great people.
And what does that tell you about the importance of doing that? Because Kenneth Branagh and Kevin Kline can do whatever they want, and they want actors to read opposite them, so it makes perfect sense.
There is a great amount of Turtles fervor here.
Say that 3
I'm
times
making you all
fast.
a deal. I have one non-Turtles question for all of you. We're saving it for the end. One, and I get to Archie Bunker's place.
I know! I'm saying
Archie Bunker, right? I know. It's a cult comic in the 80s. It was black and white. They decide to come up with a show. Chuck Lorre from 2.5 Men and The Big Bang Theory came up with the theme in 48 hours. They literally threw blank up against the wall, and they came out with this thing. So from that perspective that I just portrayed, tell me why we are here 30 years later still talking about these 4 turtles.
I'm still trying to figure that out.
You know what? We knew that.
Next question.
I'm working at it. But I think the more that I've talked to, because I've just started to do kind of Comic Cons, and the more that I've had a chance to talk to fans, which I didn't have a chance before, a few things I think are emerging. I think that because of some really good writing, we had a really good mix of comedy and action, which some of the other action shows didn't have as much. I also think it was the fraternity. I think it was that sense of people being together. And I also think that people took away moral messages. And so parents weren't, at first there was a thing, oh, it's too violent and they can't. But ultimately parents started to realize this is a good show for kids to watch because it's teaching moral messages in a very palatable, non-preachy way. So that's kind of what I've now come up with, and I don't know if it's right or wrong, but as I say, I'm still trying to figure out, I'm still amazed that happened.
I think one of the other things too is that the characters, the four of us, were so well defined that it gave
Explain that. How defined to you before you started, or defined as the show went on?
well defined actually when we first auditioned for the show. I mean, they had these specific qualities, each of them, and certainly that evolved over the course of the decade that we did it. But I think what it did was it gave kids really something to relate to. They could every kid I think could relate to one of us. And when I say us, I mean the characters, of course. And gave them something to latch onto. I can't tell you how many times I'll meet somebody who's a fan, and at 9 years old, and their parents were divorcing, and they'll say to me, Michaelangelo gave me the ability to still be able to smile even when things were, or whatever.
I had a person say when I went, after a divorce, when I went to my dad's house, I took the turtles with me. I didn't ask any more than that, but obviously he needed some companionship of this nature at his other home. Fill in the blanks however you want on that, but it's just humbling.
Very. It's impossible to quantify what these guys have been talking about in terms of what it means to us. We get how fortunate we are. We utterly get it. And the best part of this whole experience is coming to events like this. And just what Cammie said, where you get a chance to meet people, 2 and sometimes 3 generations of people who share this whole love of this particular franchise. And then you really get down and you get to meet people who will tell you that. I was in the foster system from the time I was 6 months old till I was 18, and I had to go to 5 different homes, and it was heartbreaking every time. But if there was a television, I could have something that I could latch onto that made my soul happy. And I'm okay now, and here are my kids, and honest to God, how on earth can it's so much bigger than a goofy kid show. It really is, and we are the grateful beneficiaries of all of you being here, paying attention. It's incredible.
But can I play on that? Because the timeline of the first Turtle series is a very interesting time. Super Friends had just stopped, right? It's pre-Batman the Animated Series. Right. It's pre-X-Men. So you don't have that next wave. They talk about that golden age for action animation. And it's right in the middle there. And I guess, does it deserve the credit for being pioneering, or is it literally just the first in a long line of, and we just not acknowledging it because there's an 8 in front of the year as opposed to a 9?
Well, that's a great question.
My brain hurts already.
Good night, everybody.
I didn't understand it, but okay.
No, that's a great, look, I certainly, I'm not an historian to that extent, but
But I love that you know that an N, you do use the word N in front of H.
this adds an historical moment.
Yes.
Or an hysterical. I think all of us were incredibly fortunate to be ready, willing, and able to take advantage of this incredible boon of animation that happened in that particular time. None of us, I know, I can speak with authority, none of us, Barry has been in the entertainment business for the longest of any of us, but none of us came to LA or jumped into Hollywood with the intention of being voice actors. Right. We all have live, or Cam too, that forever, live performance background, radio, music, stand-up, improv. We were all doing live action, TV, all that stuff. And then this opportunity presented itself, but it was also G.I. Joe, Transformers, all this stuff that
First team.
boom, because it was, when we were first started, it was ABC, CBS, and NBC Saturday morning was the majority of animation. Then it just went kablooey. And Turtles was kind of there at the right time. And
It's rare that people that came up with us that didn't like accidentally step into this. Whereas generations after us, from the time we said we want to be performers or singer, actor, whatever. But the next generation was, I want to do voices when I grow up.
that happens a lot now.
Yeah, so that's their through line with us. With just about everybody, was like they were pursuing something else and like, oh, what's that on my shoe?
Yeah.
Oh, voiceover.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, that's exactly right, Cam. And at that same time, remember, it was when the Disney Afternoon exploded, then it was Fox Kids, and it was one after another. And I don't think our golden age is hyperbole. I think there was some really good shit that happened.
Language.
Sorry. I said shit. But no, honestly, it was a remarkable time. But the glorious aspect of all of it is we're talking about a franchise that is completely bulletproof. I'm so inspired.
McDonald's.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's talk to the audience.
Tantamount to that. Yeah.
Just the audience. Yakko Warner just said shit.
Right? Yeah.
When I measured this,
Don't bring that shit up to the water tower.
Isn't that the coolest thing? People love to hear their favorite cartoon characters.
Oh, I love it.
Oh, yeah.
I remember hearing Lorenzo Music was a good friend of all of ours, and Lorenzo, I remember doing an episode of, I think it was Garfield or Ghostbusters.
he was the voice of Garfield.
Yeah, and Lorenzo blew a line, oh shit, he's hearing Garfield.
We're degenerating fast.
One of
One
my
fix the
favorite things.
transductional sine wave generator.
I want to get your question.
I was just going to say, speaking of cursing, often at the end of a series you get what is called a Christmas reel, which is outtakes from when we flub a line, and all kind of words came out of Leonardo's mouth when I fudge a line, if you know what I mean. And the editors, the guys in the booth, would put together, and it's just tiny little clips of everybody cursing or mocking your line, darling, wake up. Just all kinds of stuff.
I would love to hear that.
Fascinating. That would be fascinating. All right, we have microphones back there. We can do it with a microphone so everybody can hear, or we can just do hands. And if everybody's having trouble hearing, I'll make you all go back to the mics. Is that cool?
Yep.
We're all in agreement? All right, who wants to be first up? Right there.
I know it's the Turtles thing, but I heard about Animaniacs being rebooted. What's going on with that?
You're right.
The question was, the gentleman said he heard about Animaniacs being rebooted. That's true, Mr. Spielberg.
What a public service. You repeated the question.
Oh, I know. Dude, I was born back when that last night.
Full service panel.
Yeah, no, thank you for asking. Well, collectively, it speaks to the power of animation. This is the king of Hollywood, is 72 years old or whatever, says, I know, it's time to do Pinky and the Brain and Animaniacs again. And it is, it's coming out next year on Hulu. I think the fall of next year, yeah.
I saw you in Wisconsin, and you guys were awesome. And right next to me, for a two couple, you did the entire state song
Yes.
from memory. How did you do that?
Oh, I'm a freaking genius, dude. Look, thank you very much for your kind words, and I will certainly graciously accept the compliment in the spirit in which you delivered it. But, and I've said this to these guys before, and they know it's not false modesty. We're good at our jobs, but we live in Hollywood, man. You can throw a dart and hit a good singer. Writing that stuff.
I've tried.
Yeah, exactly. You did hit the guy in the ass with a dart. I know. There I go. Language. But writing that stuff is remarkable, and Randy Rogel, who wrote that and most of the songs you guys remember from Animaniacs, is the culprit, and that's very difficult to write over and over. And if you listen to the Animaniacs music from, I think we did 100 episodes, there were a dozen songs, maybe more, that were unbelievable. And that's the trick. I've met many people in my travels who know that song frontwards and backwards. So, you know, it's not that big a deal. I appreciate it, but writing it is a very big deal. Yeah.
Well, since you're on an Animaniacs tangent, for the audience, the greatest line in Animaniacs is when they're playing detectives, and they say, fingerprints.
Fingerprints. I don't think so.
Fingerprints, he goes,
Well, it depends on how you put the emphasis on the syllable. Fingerprints or fingerprints? I mean, you know.
I don't think so.
And that was utterly by design, and Mr. Spielberg and Tom Ruger and Gene McCurdy, from the beginning, the edict was to not condescend to the audience. And to a large extent, that was true with Turtles too.
That means talking down to.
Oh, thank you. Great joke. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be condescending. Oh, I'm sorry, let me start down to.
I'm going, because you played it off that way,
All right.
I will say, I'll do one name drop. 6 years ago, I worked with Prince
Oh, yeah.
on a project. We told him that joke, and he knew it. He knew it. and
He knew it. Oh, totally. I heard
totally
people
knew it.
say that he was quite aware of it and was flattered that he was included in it.
All right, let's go over there. Let's go in the back there. Yep.
Hi.
Hi guys, big fan. Just out of curiosity, how hard is it to go from like one voice to another and make it distinctive and not hurt your vocal cords?
Oh. Well, I don't think it's that difficult in terms of, there are certain voices that we all do that are more onerous, more difficult to do. In fact, when you were doing, you could, I mean, Tony's incredible doing, you know, Tony was the Tick as well. Woo! Yeah. Michaelangelo was a little more, I mean, it tore up your throat a little bit, right?
Well, yeah, it was like, you know, yeah, sort of, a little bit.
Mine was like, I got to be my own smart-ass self, but I did a character on Fairly Odd Parents called Mark Chang, which was not dissimilar. You know, this kind of guy. I was good for about an hour and a half. So there are certain voices that are physically difficult. You bear here.
Yeah, I never have a problem. I get hired for my voice, and I haven't done a whole lot of it, but I did do bebop. See, there you go.
Nice.
Yeah, and the quick bunny. Come on.
And the quick bunny, it's quick bunny.
Let's hear him. Well, it's just up there. You know? Not very high.
And Sandy was the Fledermaus on The Tick.
Yes.
And we did a show together called Back at the Barn, in which you were Freddie the Ferret.
Oh, Freddie the Ferret.
Wasn't that a blast?
Whose best friend is his friend Peck the Rooster.
Yeah.
And all I want to do is eat him, but that's wrong.
Look at that. What's the matter with you?
What? I just...
Stop it. I know. He's licking his fingers, which is really disturbing.
What? Stop me? No.
But what a group. Chris Hardwick, Lee Allen Baker, Jeff Garcia. We had a great group of actors on that show. Was it Tino Insana? Oh my God, what a blast.
One of the things they will, if you were to take a voiceover class, one of the cardinal first rules is never audition with a voice you can't sustain.
Great.
Because just about any of us can take 30 seconds on any sound, you know. But it's like if Bebop and Rocksteady had a spin-off. Oh yeah. I don't know if I know that.
Oh, Cam was Rocksteady.
So to do this voice, I can do it like that.
But if I were doing, like you have one of the guys here at the show from iZombie.
What do you say? Oh yeah.
What's it? The actor that was in the lunchroom with us.
David Anders.
Yes. I did zombie voices on his show, which is
Tears you up.
it tears you up, but you also learn to find where you could do it, but it's not like I can do that for 8
Exactly.
hours.
Let me tell you on our show. So these are our regular characters, but when we would record an episode, we would all also end up doing incidental voices, which is just a line or two in an episode. And I remember one time I was given some bad guy, and I thought, well, I'm trying to think about bad guy voice, And the first series that I worked on was Inspector Gadget, and I remember sitting there, I'd never done a cartoon before, and I was sitting right next to Frank Welker, he's right here. And I knew of the series because my kids watched it by the time I joined the series, but I never knew who did the voice of Dr. Clarke. And so I met Maurice LaMarche, it was his first series, Frank Welker's right here, super nice guy, real quiet spoken, and Don Adams right here. And I'm thinking, boy, how did I end up here? This is crazy. And then I look at the script and I see there's a Dr. Claw line coming up, but I look at these guys and I know it's not Mo, it can't be Frank, and I know it's not Don. So I figure we're just going to skip over it, and then we get to the line, all of a sudden Frank opens his mouth and out falls this voice that was just ungodly. And I looked at him and I said, oh my God, that's you! Crazy. And they stopped the recording. And he looked at me and he smiled. He said, yes, it's me.
Then he had to do it again and tear his voice apart.
Well, but Frankie's got these vocal cords of leather or something. So on our show, I'm given this incidental of a bad guy, and I'm thinking, well, I can kind of do that. Now, this is years later, right? And I sort of figured out how Frank did that. And so I decided to do something kind of in that vein. And I was going to do a voice like, I got like a line and a half out. And I was losing my voice. I couldn't do it. I had to change the character to something that I could sustain.
Yeah,
It's
well,
impossible.
And Maurice LaMarche did the voice of Yosemite Sam for a long time, and finally just said, I can't do it anymore. Unless you do it on a Friday, so I can have the weekend.
To recover.
And so, yeah, that's a great question. It's not that unusual, but in terms of switching characters, that's part of, that's why you're an actor. You just hone in on one and off you go.
Yeah, see, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, when we did the crossover transdimensional Turtles in 2012, it was a lot of fun to watch Rob doing Raphael, the old Raphael and the new Dontatello having a conversation together. That was really cool.
It was huge fun. And then what's also cool is you get a guy like Billy West is, well, he's Billy West, that's all you need to know. But when he does Futurama, I've seen him do 2 pages where he does Zoidberg and Fry and Zach Brannigan. Boom, boom, boom. And just, does them all utterly differently, utterly seamless.
Wow.
Inhabits all the characters, and it's just a gas to watch.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Yeah, and without missing a beat.
No, not even,
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Okay, let's go over here.
I know you guys kind of beat me to the punch with the voices, but being that we're in Chicago and the pizza, would you mind doing a little improv with all 4 turtles ordering pizza?
Oh, yeah. Hang on.
Dance, monkey.
Hang on. I gotta record
I
this.
understand there's a totally different kind of pizza for Chicago. Thin, thick, fat. I mean, all I want is hot fudge, marshmallow, tuna fish, and Doritos. How many freaking kinds of pizzas can there be, guys?
Well, as long as there's anchovy and hot fudge, that's all I care about. I don't care if it's deep dish or a 50-gallon barrel.
Donatello, you gotta do something. Figure this whole pizza deal out, will you?
Yeah, I'm working on a new one with a sine wave generator. It's fantastic. Maybe that's not the kind you want? No?
I'm thinking we should do something kind of healthy. Maybe tofu and kale.
You know what? I think you're as full of shit as a Christmas goose.
Thanks, Raphael.
We're the good guys.
But we gotta order pizza.
Okay, but
fast.
Hey, Donatello.
Oh, are you getting it?
Leonardo, listen, I think I see Shredder. What do you think we should do?
On our pizza?
No. Out there in the sewer.
Oh.
Yeah. What should we do? You better think.
Well, sometimes I would say rarely something like this in the show.
Okay, go ahead.
We gotta think of something. Fast!
There you go. Thank
What are your top 3 favorite roles? All 3 of you.
The question for this gentleman is, what are our favorite roles?
Yeah, top 3.
Cinnamon.
Cinnamon Ralph.
Cinnamon raisin, to be exact.
My favorite role is the next one because it means I'm working. I don't know. You know, you guys look.
That's like, it's kind of like Sophie's Choice. It's
Just
something
this
else.
alone, when we all have so many friends who are so gifted actors, and all of them, you know, often people work. The work goes like this. It's often, you know, very sporadic. But the fact is that we've reached a point now where we can go, crap, we are part of the original Ninja Turtles, which literally became iconic to the world. And the truth is that if it never got any better than this, that's a big deal. Fortunately, we've all done other stuff.
Answer his question directly. My favorite was being with you. Was doing Freddy the Ferret, because it is a voice that I played around with. It wasn't. I didn't bring it to that show. I auditioned with that voice for just about every show I ever auditioned for. And I found a home for it. So that is one. The other is being the voice of Snoopy. Not that the voice was all that special, but because, like a lot of you folks that grew up with Turtles, I grew up with Peanuts. And so to be part of the original producers of Great Pumpkin and Charlie Brown, yes, to get to work with Bill was like, I am not worthy to be in you. I would say, like some of you have said, I said, you brought me my childhood, Bill. So I know what it's like to be on that side of the table, but I got the blessing of getting to be my child. I got to be my childhood. So there you go. That's me. I'm done.
For me, I mean, Michaelangelo is certainly you just can't beat it. You know. However, as far as fun in the studio and just the writing, for me, it was The Tick.
Yes.
That show, and I remember all of us. The first time I met Ben Edlund, I thought he was a PA, a production assistant, because he was about 22 years old, and he was the definition of precocious. You know, we're reading this dialogue, it's mind-blowing. And I said, hey, I'm Rob, because I'm Ben Edlund. I said, who's that? Oh, that's the creator. Right. What an unbelievable talent. And yeah, that show was never not fantastic.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've had some wonderful experiences. You know, I don't want to pander. I would say on a level of just looking forward to going into the studio, it really was Turtles. Yeah. Because I just had such a joy, you know, working with these guys for, 10 years, 9 years?
Yeah, and Pete Renaday
and Renee
Jacobs,
James Avery.
James Avery was
and Jim Cummings.
Jim Cummings, Pat Fraley was Krang. It was an astonishing group of actors. And I know people say that all the time, but it was, and the proof is in the pudding 25, 30 years later.
I mean, yeah, when I was a kid, because I started as a kid actor, I had some amazing experiences going back to the early days of television and working on something that you've never heard of called the Milton Berle Show. But, you know, those things are...
Before television.
Yeah, it was before. Right. That's true. That's true.
It was the first cave painting.
I actually walked from house to house with Milton Berle and we performed, and it was exciting. But no, I like that because on that show, that's where Elvis Presley was on that show. So I got to meet Elvis. So, I mean, all of those things are great, but just sheer joy, just relaxing, sheer joy, you know, going to a party.
Every day.
That was you guys.
Yeah, it was cool.
That's fascinating. All right, let's go to the back there on the microphone. If I heard right, you guys said that, or one of you said that your original goal when you got in the entertainment industry wasn't to be a voice actor, and that you guys kind of fell into it in a way. What were each of your original goals when you were getting into the business? Like, where did you see your career going, and where did you kind of want it to go?
For me, I wanted to be an actor ever since I saw Peter Pan, a production of Peter Pan in 4th grade. And it was just magical to me, and I said, that's what I want to do. And my dad also, my folks met working at NBC in New York at 30 Rock, And my dad wanted to be an actor and wanted to be a DJ and all that stuff. And so somehow it's kind of weird, but I feel like it was sort of in my DNA. And so I ended up in radio and falling into network promo. And that ended up being a really terrific gig. I was the voice of NBC for 16 years.
He was the must-see TV guy every
But he
week.
also modeled, and I've seen pictures of telling you.
So I grew up in Cleveland. But you gotta, come on, Kimmy, if you're gonna do it, you gotta get, so here it is, you guys, it's like this. It goes right on the belt.
About dropping the mic.
Yeah.
Dad's going on Facebook.
Oh, yeah. So,
I grew up across the lake in Michigan, and I wanted to be and I was a singer who became an actor, a lot of stage. When I moved to LA, it was essentially to do, or presumably to do live action. That's what I was doing. A lot of commercials, episodic television, and when the opportunity arose to audition for animation, it was, you bet, because I want to work. I just want to work.
It doesn't matter what.
Yeah, I just love to be creative, and I did all kinds of stuff for free. I just like to work. But Barry and Cam have been in the entertainment business literally their whole lives, long before cartoons. Yeah.
Yes, I have some great right out of the womb stories.
You literally. Cam is a member of the King family.
Yeah.
You hear that applause?
which is related to Arcade Fire.
Yes.
Yeah, quite a long line, but yeah, you say, what was your goal? I was, like with Barry, we were kind of like just there. So it wasn't, if anything, it was like, what am I going to do instead of this?
Right. Tony and I were, in fact, my parents probably would have preferred I had not gone into show business, but it worked out, knock wood. But all of this is just this wonderful kind of melting pot of these desire just to perform. And you're just available, and so you kind of go where the people are who can see you do your gig. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, well, you give it a shot.
And I'm having a great time now. It wasn't my goal, and I never thought I would do it.
Yeah.
But right now I'm teaching in a Master of Fine Arts program, and I'm teaching film acting. And seeing another generation start to develop, and that is very, very exciting to
And when
me.
they find out he's Dontatello, they lose their mind.
They wear the shirts to class. But I tell them, no, you're not going to get an A just by wearing a shirt. Not going to happen.
All right, we got time for one more back there.
Do you guys have a favorite episode?
Question.
You get asked that.
Still don't have a good answer.
After close to 200, it's kind of hard to remember. I don't have a favorite, but I have to say that the very first one holds a dear spot in my heart.
I have a favorite where Leonardo decides, I am done being the leader of you people.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
And I'm going to let my hair down and y'all can be in charge of every fudging thing.
Do you have a favorite one? Yeah, see?
Well, actually, the first one, I kind of go along with
I agree.
Tony, because we just did a reading of it.
Yeah, we just my podcast, we did a live podcast at a comedy club in Burbank a couple weeks ago, and these guys were kind enough. What's that?
Talking Tunes.
Talking Tunes, thank you. They were kind enough to come out, and we did a reading of the pilot script, the first episode of Ninja Turtles all together.
And we got to have April with us.
Renee Jacobs was with us. We did April, and then in the audience, we got Billy Farmer, who was the voice of Goofy.
Oh wow!
Came up and and he played Master Splinter as Goofy.
It was wonderful.
And he had a 3-page monologue. He's narrating the whole origin story.
You guys can watch it on YouTube.
Thank God.
Yeah, as you hear, because he goes through the whole
How we came to be.
the origination story of the Turtles. And he's Donatello with his boa. It was, and then you throw in a couple of, vodka tonics, and it's just perfect.
I
hope you guys had as much fun doing
Oh
this
my God.
as we had watching.
Thank
Give it
you.
up. Mary Gordon,
Thank you. Thank you very much. Pleasure.
We've got panels here all weekend.
Come
so
see us downstairs.
Before we go,
Yeah. Oh yeah, ready?
One, two, three. Turtle Power!